Fresh off an almost demoralizing loss to the Dallas Mavericks. Moral victories, they're not a thing anymore. These comebacks, a lot of the time, you'd rather your team just went out and got slaughtered, as opposed to all this false hope, all these almost wins that our Boston Celtics are racking up. It feels like on the regular. I am Adam Kaufman. This is Celtics Beat. Evan Valenti, our producer, back with us this week. Mark Murphy from the Boston Herald does a great job and a good friend of this program as well. Fellas, I'm just going to start with this. I'm seeing things on the floor. I know that they have lost 7 of 10. I know that we are all down. I know there's the Fire Brad crowd. Danny's got to go. He's not making moves. Evan Fournier, he's only been around a couple games. He scored 6 points in like 60 some odd minutes. He sucks. I'll tell you what. I think they're going to the conference finals. What do you think? Am I crazy? I think they're going to the conference. I know. April Fools, guys. April Fools. April Fools.
That was the worst April Fool's joke I've seen today.
Congratulations. I know. And, my kids keep saying, do an April Fool's joke. I think they think it's like a magic trick. It doesn't work that way.
No, I just think they've lost their mental toughness. This whole thing, Luka, as he did the last time they played, just buries a 35-footer and they just bow their heads and that's it. They don't play defense the rest of the way, or when they do, they just get discouraged. I think Stevens hit it on the head last night. These guys just are not responding to adversity. They just, yeah.
So Twitter, the vocal minority, if you will, although it's getting louder, Twitter wants to put that on Brad. We can always talk about the roster issues this team has, and there are many, and Danny has owned that, and that's on him. But I have pointed out, I've talked about, I'm far from the only one, by the way. It's not a hot take, but I've mentioned it on several of these shows. It just looks like when you watch these games that Jayson Tatum, Jaylen Brown, they know how good they are. They're all stars, and Kemba Walker hasn't been fully himself this year. He's dealt with the injuries and obviously load management and whatnot. It just seems like the two stars, they don't trust anybody else on the roster, which is why you're seeing so much ISO ball and that type of thing. And I'm not even totally blaming them, given the inconsistency of everybody else. I mean, they should trust each other, quite frankly, more than everybody else. But when it impacts the system, the style of play, and as you just alluded to, and as Brad, to the degree that Brad does, went off on after that game last night, it just looks like everybody collectively is out there on the floor quitting. I don't know how many times, Mark, we need to hear Kemba Walker say this year, I'm getting discouraged. And when I get discouraged, I can't show it. I can't get down to the dumps. I need to, I need to pick myself. Well, so do it, man. Like, easy for me to say, I get it. But now we're not even talking about athletic ability anymore. Now we're just talking about like mental fortitude. If you're going to get down to the dumps, if you're going to get discouraged, you got to snap yourself out of it and be something of a leader. And if the players can't do it to themselves on the floor at a certain point in time, we are going to have to, maybe it's this show, have a real conversation about Brad Stevens and his role in this.
Yeah. I think part of it, the more I see Tatum these last few weeks, part of it is just he's gone into such ISO mode. I think it's affecting other people. And I don't want to say he's to the level of Kyrie was to him, but he's holding on to the ball. He's waiting for the floor to clear. It's like he's playing like the guy who worked out with Kobe all summer,
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's got to
Celtics
change.
fans' greatest fears realized already. It only took a couple years.
I can't believe I'm saying it. I think that's part of it. He's got to get back into moving the ball. I think Jaylen has been more straight ahead. I think Jaylen is actually trying to do the right things. And he's certainly been their most consistent when he's out there quarter to quarter. I mean, it's become a Tatum that you don't see him until the fourth quarter. It's, there's, I think.
Or like the other night when he erupted in the first quarter and then disappeared.
Yeah.
For, what seemed like the rest of the game and then showed up again late.
Yeah, and I'm not sure he's taking good shots. I think some of those threes are bad shots. And he, last night going in the fourth, what was he? I think he was 1 for 7 from three.
He finished 1 for 8, so it's not like he had a terrific day. It's not like he was amazing. But when you talk about that, I love Jayson Tatum, and I keep going back to this one thing that Dwayne Wade said a couple of months ago on TNT. The problem with Jayson Tatum is Jayson Tatum, can basically hit any shot at any time on the floor that he wants, which is an unbelievable skill, especially when you're 23 years old. The problem with Tatum is he doesn't uplift the rest of the roster like he needs to for this team to be who they need to be. And I'm not, and this is the thing that, Adam, you and I talked about this at the beginning of the season. This is the first year in the Tatum Brown era, where they're, 1 and 2 in the pecking order, et cetera. Mm-hmm. But this is the first year these guys are going to actually get some serious scrutiny, in terms of wearing the problems that this team has, and them accepting responsibility and blame for this thing, right? Because everybody's trying to throw around, where does the blame go? Where does the blame go? And as Danny said this morning on 98.5, everybody shares the responsibility of losing. I mean, Danny said, I accept some of this. It's on Brad, but it's also on our players. And he was talking about it more in terms of Brad, how, Brad's not out there, going 11 of 40, whatever the Celtics went last night against Dallas. Brad's not out there shooting shots. He's only trying to get people in the right places. He's not the one controlling where the ball goes all the time. So when you get back to blaming the product on the floor, that, is that blame starts at the top. That starts with Tatum. And I got into a little bit of this a couple of days ago with some people on Twitter about some of the shots that Tatum takes, and about how people throw numbers at me. Oh, Tatum shooting 40 whatever percent on, pull up threes. But the step back three, early in the shot clock from 28 feet, 29, 30 feet is not a good shot, especially when you're not in rhythm. My problem with Tatum is, he thinks he can create himself some rhythm with that shot at any time during the game, where you and I and all of us, I think, understand, if you're not in rhythm to start the game, and when Tatum's in rhythm, he'll hit a couple of threes in a row and you're like, all right, now he's cooking. But the best way for a guy to get in rhythm is to try and drive to the basket, try and get fouled, and go to the free throw line. And this team, and Kemba's done a good job of it recently, getting to the free throw line. They brought in Fournier to kind of help that. But this team lacks rhythm consistently. Right. And part of that is because this team does not get to the free throw line and does not take free throws. And, you're trying to hit home runs constantly. And when you're not in rhythm, those home runs, they don't fall.
No, I think, and I think they're getting a little entitled. Last night, Smart went back to this whole thing. Well, we're not getting rewarded offensively or defensively. We're not getting rewarded for playing hard defense.
Yep.
In other words, they're getting called for a lot of stuff. And I think they feel like they're getting screwed a little bit. But it's not the way to look, obviously, not when they're not attacking, they're not being aggressive. And that's why they're not getting calls.
Well, I know we've heard, Chris Forsberg, another good buddy of this program over on NBC, and Kendrick Perkins on the post-game shows. These guys have been saying regularly, and they're right. This team, to your point, entitlement, Mark, it just seems like they expect everything to come easier than it is to this point in the year. And I don't know if that's, a few of these guys, not everybody, but a few, the figureheads, whether it's Smart, Tatum, Brown, you can sprinkle in Kemba from last year, just these, 3 trips to the conference finals in 4 years, almost trips to the NBA finals a couple of times. And, more often than not being among the upper echelon of Eastern Conference teams. And now they're sitting 2 games below 500, playing remarkably inconsistent, playing like crap. Honestly, right. I mean, I've talked about it on this show before, Mark, that this is the first time in a long time, certainly in the Brad Stevens era, that I can remember, hate watching a team basically. Like this is not a fun team to watch at all.
No,
it's not an
no,
enjoyable experience. And I don't know if it is, to your point, entitlement, or as the other guys said, just expecting things to come easier. But to me, it just becomes a, where do you get off? Like when your top stars are really good, they're all stars, but they're so young, 24, 23 years old. Like you have not been around long enough to have that mentality, even in the AAU culture that exists today.
Right. This team argues way too much with the refs. It's like 4 guys, depending on who you look at. Tatum's been doing it since he was a rookie, but it's, and they're getting beat because they're arguing. At least I thought I saw a couple of plays like that last night where 2 guys are back talking to the ref and Dallas gets a fast break hoop. It's, they're just way too much into that.
Yeah, it's not been pretty. So I guess, it circles back to where we started. Let's go to Brad Stevens, because we've been having these conversations on these shows elsewhere. Ever right before the show sent me a clip from Stephen A. Smith now, and he's paid for the hot takes, obviously, but I don't think Brad Stevens is long for Boston if this continues, and the players have tuned him out, and it's white noise out there, and Danny's going to have to move on. Well, here, just a quick reality check for people who want Brad Stevens gone. One, Celtics in the last several months gave him another extension. He's around for another 6 years or something like that. He presumably passed on, not that we know anything was concretely offered, but presumably passed on what, second to staying in Boston would have been his dream job, and coaching the Indiana Hoosiers. He left that, and he's not going to North Carolina with Roy Williams retiring.
Maybe he's waiting for Krzyzewski.
Maybe he's just waiting on Duke. I don't know. I doubt it, though. I really do doubt it. I think that, Brad strikes me as the kind of guy that wants to get this done here, that wants to finish the job that he started. And I am still a believer in him. I am. I'm not calling for his head or anything like that. I still think that you have one of the brightest minds in terms of coaches in the NBA. But obviously a bright mind is only going to take you so far. You need to be a motivator. And Brad, post-game last night, was about as heated as we have ever heard him. And I know he has said in the past, the way I sound to you guys isn't necessarily how I sound in that locker room. I remember him saying that to Gary Washburn once. So I'm sure, no, he's not going to throw things and curse probably, but I'm sure he is yelling at his players and taking them to task. We don't get to see that, and we certainly don't see it on the sidelines. Is there, in your estimation, a motivational issue stemming from Brad on down? Is there something that is just not clicking from the coaching staff, absent, that Walter McCarty kind of caliber? I know they added Evan Turner, but they don't have that sort of hard-nosed veteran guy that like a Perk, guy that you're scared of on the coaching staff, that is really gonna rein these guys in, who, unlike Brad, has been through the ropes. I know Brad's been coaching a long time, but he hasn't been an NBA player through those rigors. So is there something missing here that needs to be addressed to get these guys in line?
I think that's a good point. That I think the players have become a little hard-headed, and maybe they're not hearing as much. I know Gary got a lot of heat for writing the players have tuned out Brad column, but I think there's a certain amount of that. I mean, when all you know is going to the conference finals, maybe you get to a point where you don't hear people as much. You've been there. You think you've been there. And so I think part of that really falls on the players, but I think there is a disconnect right now. Absolutely.
Part of it, I think, is everything that we just talked about. But what about, I'll have friends text me, Mark, regularly during these games, like last night, where they just fall down by 1 billion and then claw their way back and fall just short. These almost wins that people are having a field day tweeting about. And like I said off the top, it's just so much easier when your team just gets crushed rather than giving you that false hope. it feels like they're a lot of the time, and maybe it's player execution, but who else can you blame but the players? They're the ones with the ball. When you look to the coaching staff, though, and Brad in particular as the leader of the group, does it look like they're absent a plan out there a lot of the time to you? If Brad can't get them to defend, and offensively, all the ISO ball that we were talking about, and they're not moving it, and it just seems like they don't trust each other, and they're not really running plays. They're just kind of firing up threes, not going to the hole, not going to the free throw line like Evan was talking about. I mean, now we're getting into the system. Now it's not even a motivational issue. It's not a mental issue. Now it's a game planning issue. Is there something wrong with the game planning that you're seeing this season?
Yeah, he keeps saying he's going back to ball movement. He keeps saying that he's getting more cutting into the offense, and it just doesn't happen. They'll play one great game like that, and then it disappears again. And all of a sudden you see ISO ball. So not sticking to that, I think part of that is obviously going to be on the coach. That's, it's, you call a timeout if you see that, you guys are suddenly in an icicle, and you snap him out of it. He doesn't do enough of that.
Yeah, he's always been criticized for that, like taking way too long to take timeouts and letting runs kind of build and fester, and not trying to use the timeout to stop the momentum of the other team. But like the problem is, you call the timeout anyway, it's too late, and then you get some bungled play and like normally like the ATO stuff was normally the bread and butter of the Celtics. Like call a timeout, you get a play running out of it, and all of a sudden, all right, you start feeling good about yourself. But and again, I don't have the stats in front of me. I'm sure people out there do. And if you happen to have the statistic, I'd love to see it. Like what the success rate of Celtics out of timeouts are this year. Because again, it doesn't feel, this group doesn't feel as connected. And that does fall back on Brad. And it you see it more, I think, on the defensive side of the ball, where this team just doesn't communicate nearly as well as they should. I've been noticing, and I know people are like, oh man, you're just talking about energy, but this team lacks energy. I mean, last night, off the top of the game, they don't have Rob Williams. I get that. But like, okay, you still have Tatum, Brown, Kemba, Fournier, Smart. Like, it's not like you're depleted. You still have a lot of talent, and they start the game very lethargically. You have, the Mavs get up sort of big. You talked about a couple of shots that Luka hits that are out of this world, because Luka's an out of this world player. And this team drags their head and they run some BS offensive set that doesn't do anything. They go back down the other end and they don't play good defense. But then they get back into with their defense a little bit. They make a run towards the end of the first quarter, and you think but they just can't seem to string things together. And, part of that's on the players and part of that's on the coach. And I think, Brad's is as frustrated as anybody else in terms of what's going on here. But when you have disconnects defensively like this team has had, especially when you go back to past years and they've just been, didn't matter who the hell was on the floor, this team was good defensively. I mean, you go back to having like Jay Crowder, Kelly Olynyk, Marcus Smart, Isaiah Thomas. You go back to any one of these teams and, collectively as a unit, they play well defensively. At least they would have that to hold their hat on. Like, yeah, they wouldn't, shoot the lights out every night. Nobody expects that. But defensively, the effort was there. I just don't see, the effort looks bad. The effort looks off. The chemistry looks off. The energy looks off. Unless things are perfect. Unless, like, you saw it the other night when, they played Milwaukee the night they won, right? You saw much better energy to start the game. Fournier, the trade has been, passed and he's coming shortly, right? They have their starting five of Kemba, Jaylen, Jayson, Marcus, and Rob. Like, the conditions were perfect and everything seemed to work. But when things aren't perfect, this team seems to have some reason, they're stuck in the mud or something. I can't quite explain it. And that, when you want to blame Brad for stuff, I will blame Brad for this team lacking mental focus.
Sure.
So you want to say the hospital Celtics are flatlining this year?
Very nice.
Thank you.
Very nice.
Yeah, I think they're incredible front runners. When things are going great, they're great. The moment things turn, they just tuck it in. It's, anybody can hit baskets when you're on the end of a 12-0 run, but it's when you guys hit one of those droughts that Brad was referring to that, they just lose confidence.
It's like they quit.
I really don't know where that comes from, because they've been to the Eastern Conference Finals 3 of the last 4 years. So they know the right way to play. It's, it's just that responsibilities have shifted, maybe, they thought that a veteran like Tristan Thompson would sort of keep everybody in line, but he hasn't even been part of the picture.
You get him on the floor in the first place.
No. So, maybe Fournier does something. From a leadership standpoint.
Mark, do you have anything, because I think it's been obviously refuted by Celtics players at this point, about, the Tristan Thompson, parties too much or it goes out. Do you have anything on that?
No, that, that was Kevin's report. I haven't heard a word about that. I just know the Celtics denials on it.
Yeah.
They've come out pretty strong about it.
Yeah.
It
included.
It must be hard this year to kind of notice stuff like that when nobody's in the locker room and, everybody's zooming in at the end of games, your press conferences, like that stuff. Yeah. It's hard to even get a read on any of that because nobody's even around.
No, that kind of access hasn't existed for a year.
Right.
So, it's, you're not there when Smart decides to start throwing chairs against the wall.
Right.
But, it's hard to tell. I mean, it could be. I mean, I see just in the on-court product, I see divisions.
So, Mark Murphy, let's go back to the Brad Stevens discussion for just a moment here. And again, I don't think he's gone. Evan doesn't think he's gone. I'm going to put words in your mouth. You don't think he's gone. I don't think any of us are calling for him to be gone. And please do, interrupt me if you do. But let's just have the conversation for the Fire Brad crowd that's out there and people saying, just give us someone else. This guy's overrated. He's not motivating the team. What does he really want here? And blah, blah, all the stuff that we always see on social media. He's got to go. He sucks. Now, again, I don't agree with any of that, but let's just say he's got to go. Who would you want? Now, I've had friends of mine suggest, assistant X, assistant Y, guys that either, are retreads or haven't yet had that opportunity. And who knows? I mean, like Bruce Cassidy with the Bruins, right? Like maybe somebody, gets the opportunity and they actually do run with it. And hey, this, people were skeptical, but this was the right move. I don't know who that guy is. The only guy that I can think of in the NBA that if you said to me, Brad's got to go, who do you want? The only one I can come up with that's available, obviously, because that's a big part of it for people that would get Doc. You can't have Doc.
Right.
The only guy that I can think of, Mark, is Kenny Atkinson. That's the only guy that I can think of that.
Yeah.
He did some things with the Nets with, he did a lot with a little, as Brad did for so many years in Boston before he started to do a little with a lot. That's the only guy that I can think of.
I would hesitate with him because he's a developmental guy. He, once the product matured, they get rid of him. I think you need a guy who can deal with the young stars.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure that was Kenny Atkinson's forte either.
Sure.
And the questions come up about how does Brad deal with stars? I mean, I know they all left for different reasons, but you've lost Kyrie, Gordon, and Horford.
Yeah.
And actually Terry Rozier.
Sure. Although Horford would come back in a second if he could.
Yeah. If he had been bought out, I wouldn't have been surprised.
Yeah, agreed.
But it's the evidence is that his high caliber players don't stick around. So I don't know if they're not buying in. Kyrie, I don't think Kyrie bought in. I mean, that's pretty
Yeah.
obvious.
I mean, you could argue like Allen and, Al left for money, Hayward left for opportunity and certainly
Right,
money,
right,
but
right.
like
But
clearly
Hayward didn't.
Kyrie is the one that did not buy in.
But Hayward did not think this system was for him. And this is his college coach.
Did he not think the system was for him, or did he not think his place within the system?
Well, yeah, his place within the system.
Like he didn't want to be a fourth option. I don't blame him.
I just think that, they really missed what he brought.
Yeah.
I think.
That's what Fournier is supposed to be.
They were better. I don't quite get this, but they were a better defensive team with Hayward on the floor.
I get that. He's a good
He's a
defensive player.
defender.
Yeah. Good two-way player.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that wasn't his reputation coming in, I guess. Yeah. But
he's switchable though. See, that was the beauty of that team was they could switch defensively. And this team, they've always had a small point guard. So this whole notion, and Kemba, out of all the small point guards they've had, probably tries the hardest on defense. Yeah. So I'll say that.
Yeah.
They just don't have, they don't have a lot of Rob is their only, and they have no consistent size. I mean, with Tice gone now, especially, they have no rim deterrent at all whatsoever. And when Rob's in there, he is an obvious rim deterrent. I mean, I know he's only 6'8" or whatever, 6'9", but his wingspan, as people have noted, is just ginormous. And his ability to block shots and time them has been, it's been Miles Turner-esque in terms of percentages, right? So, they really lack when they go small. They have no interior presence at all whatsoever.
Well, you saw last night, no Rob. 6 of Dallas's first 8 points were in the paint. They just immediately attacked, and without him, I mean, he's become so important in a short period of time. What's that?
I said, poor Mo Wagner.
Yeah, that's just not him.
No, it's not what he is.
Yeah, I mean, he's too busy planting his face on elbows. That was the most ridiculous call last night.
It's the war on Tice all over again. It's just I don't know how many big guys got to get punched in the face, kicked in the face, elbowed in the face,
right,
before they get a foul call. But the best one, the Siakam kicking Daniel Tice in the face, still getting called for a foul is the most outrageous part of it. But Mo Wagner's not especially with Porzingis, right? Who's not the strongest 7-footer, but he can shoot over you. He gets bullied by Marcus Smart because Smart's got a better low center of gravity there. But again, they don't, like you said, 6 of the first 8 points in the paint. They have no rim deterrence. And so when you have a team, and maybe this is part of maybe this falls back on Danny. Again, this whole episode is about the blame game and who the hell can we throw all the blame at? Danny's part.
Welcome to April.
Yeah, right. Danny's part in this too of having a roster with no rim protection on it is something that we need to talk about. And I think people go back to the Miles Turner, Doug McDermott thing,
right,
and want to talk about that a lot. And Miles Turner is a great defensive player, no question, and they would definitely help right now.
Yeah.
But when you're getting beat to the rim constantly, that's an easy way for a team to get dejected.
Right.
You know what I mean, you talk about guys hanging their heads. You're down 8-0. And all in 68 points have been layups. I get that. So, you talk about schematics, you talk about roster construction, you talk about guys freelancing out there. It's all, and gets back to Danny's quote. It's all, this blame is all shared, and it's only convoluted or magnified, I should say, because of this absolutely ridiculously crazy season Boston's having in terms of injuries. It's April 1st, and they still haven't had the availability of every guy in their roster to play in a game. I mean, the Romeo stuff is hysterical. Every week you look, it's a new thing with Romeo. Tristan's out. Jaylen was out with a knee thing. Now Rob's out before the game. Tatum was scratched, a couple of games ago for ill. It's at some point I would like to just have a 3-game sample size of everybody on the roster playing at the same time.
Yeah, you're asking too much. Can't have it.
I know. I know there's a reason that they have Kemba on that knee program, but at what point do you break him out of that and just allow him to play?
The playoffs. I mean, that's
I think he needs a little rhythm before that.
I don't disagree with you, but I think that's what their plan is. I think it's, we're not breaking the glass in case of emergency until the playoffs roll around.
Yeah.
But so just going back quick to like the Atkinson stuff and Stevens, let's just let's pretend for the sake of it that like we don't all love Brad and Brad's a great guy. Like Brad's a jerk. Let's just pretend Brad is he's a jerk. He's a terrible human being. You don't want to deal with him. Like he treats you the way Belichick treats the media. Get him gone. So removing any personal biases, right? Is there, because I always like to say, like, president of the fan club, he's a great life coach and all that stuff. Is there that guy? You said, you don't need a development guy. You need a guy who's going to be able to, work with younger, not just younger players, but veteran players. I mean, it's like, are we basically just boiling down to, because it ain't Mark Jackson? Are we talking about like pulling Jeff Van Gundy finally out of retirement? Like what are we talking? Is that guy out there, Mark?
You're looking for some kind of a young star, a guy like a Lloyd Pierce, who, before he ran into trouble in Atlanta, and I don't think that was entirely his fault.
Yeah.
He was that young guy guru. When he was on the Sixers staff, he was everybody's favorite assistant coach. He was kind of a rising star. I think you need a guy like that. I don't know if that fits up here, but yeah.
Those guys don't grow on trees though. And
right.
As much as you want to, I mean, this is an April Fool's joke, but Rick Pitino could come walking through that door again if he wanted to.
And destroy the franchise for the second time. So are we all in agreement then? What's that? John Calipari, yeah.
I covered Cal the year he jumped from UMass to the Nets, and that was like, you talk about a circus. That was just crazy.
So then, and I zeroed this in on you, Mark, but are we all in agreement then that, I mean, like that guy, there's no guy out there that you would replace Brad Stevens with right now? If you could, if you were on a lame duck contract and removing all the money he's owed, is there a single guy out there you'd replace Brad with right now?
No.
And that's the thing for all you Brad haters. What do you want?
Doc. Like, they want Doc. Bring
Doc.
In Doc.
Right, Doc.
Yeah, and I can't wait to watch another 3-1 lead. Like it's the answer to this problem is not a simple one. And you get rid of Danny. Okay, who's going to be the GM then? You're gonna have and I love Mike Zarin. Is Mike Zarin going to take over? Is that what we need to do, or do you need fresh blood in there? This is something we talked about with Gary Washburn. He was. There's got to be some fresh blood somewhere at some point. Has to come into this organization, have a decent amount, powerful voice to make some sort of change here. Does it come into the front office? Does it come to the coaching staff? Is it a player, a veteran that comes in and straightens these guys out? I mean, that's all the questions that Danny and ultimately Wick and Steve and everybody else that works in that ownership group have to come up with. Because this season or do we just go, hey, this is one of the weirdest seasons in the history of the league, and we shouldn't put a lot of stock?
Wasn't that last year?
No, again, you could say this continuing into this year is
it's almost like it's one long season.
It really is. I'll go with you on that.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
No, well, just the coaching thing, like you go back to that, I know the segment's been mainly about coaching. There's not one of those guys that's just going to magically come available. Like, what are you going to do? Like try and get Mark Few out of Gonzaga? We can go out of the college ranks and try and find somebody. Chris Beard just got a job with Texas.
They did that though.
Broke that news. But the good college, like the only guy that I would sell out for in the college ranks of anybody is Jay Wright of Villanova. And Jay Wright's had opportunities to come to the NBA and he said no every time. So Jay Wright's not the guy to fix it either. So to all of you that complain about Brad, but like the other options really don't exist. The coach, as Mark has said, that can handle young stars, that guy's probably on a team with young stars on it, right?
Well, and again, it's not like a guy like Jay Wright has any experience handling the Kyrie Irvings of the world,
right?
Like this, Who's going to do that? I mean, it's
going to be it's going to be a next NBA player. I think.
Right.
It's going to be.
Is it Rondo?
Is it Chauncey Billups?
Rondo the genius?
You know what? Rondo probably had a better relationship with Brad than he did with any other coach he ever had. And that's saying something.
Because he didn't throw water bottles at him?
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. Or Brad, and this might be part of what the current situation is. Brad's not confrontational.
Yeah.
So,
Is that the move then? Just be like, hey, Rondo, here's a boatload of money to retire. We need you on our bench. Or like you bring Rondo in as a player. Like because Rondo, he's probably not willing to give it up. He just won a championship ring last year, and he was a good player on a Lakers team that won the title. It's not like he wasn't some random scrub at the end of the bench. No, he was pivotally important to the Lakers winning that title. I mean, I have a hard time being like, yeah, that's the move. Just throw a boatload of money at Rondo to be an assistant coach on a team instead of playing in the NBA. I don't see how that lines up. And, again, the answer is not a simple one, but I guess that could be an option. And I know that Rondo and Brad, I'm sure Rondo and Brad had their disagreements because Rondo disagrees with everybody. Sure. But, if they had a good relationship, maybe that's it. I don't know. But we all know Rondo's a genius, and eventually he's going to be a head coach because he just has the mind for it. Does he have
it's funny. I don't feel like that's inevitable at all. Not because he couldn't be, but because I don't think Rondo just doesn't strike me as the kind of guy that wants to do that.
I don't know.
Mark, you were a hell of a lot closer to him than either of us.
No, and he's just so smart. That's the thing about him. I did a story. His rookie year, I talked to his high school coach, who was Mike Bibby's cousin, Doug. And he was also Rondo's science teacher. And algebra. And so Rondo was in the back of the class sleeping, get his head on the desk.
Yeah.
And Bibby says, after every class, I throw out a challenge problem. So that day I throw it out. Everybody's sitting there trying to figure out. And all of a sudden, Rondo, with his head still planted on the desk, puts his arm up like this. And Bibby said, these are Bibby's words. He said, damn it, if the little SOB didn't get it right. So, Rondo's one of those kind of guys.
Remember, though, sometimes, not every time without fail or anything like that, but sometimes it's the really smart ones that struggle most in that type of setting because, they have trouble with people they're trying to teach not grasping what they're talking about or not being able to do it. Like why couldn't some of these great players, a Magic Johnson, a Wayne Gretzky, whomever, like Larry Bird was obviously a great head coach, but some, haven't been able to do it because it's like, why can't you just go do like what I did? Why can't you go do what I'm talking about here? Right. And I don't know if Rondo's that guy or not. Maybe Rondo could boil it down, make it real easy to understand and go execute. I just have no idea.
Yeah. Well, one thing about Larry for a moment, his great gift was he had no problem delegating. He had Rick Carlisle and Dick Harder doing his offense and his defense. And Larry, he was incredibly low ego as a head coach. Mm-hmm. But anyway, Rondo, the one indication of what he could be like is for all of the crap that's gone on with him the last couple of years, you'll never hear, unless, maybe with the exception of Ray Allen, you'll never hear a former teammate say he was a bad teammate.
Right.
He was a great teammate to people. And he just happened to not like Ray, I guess. But it was, so he'll have that kind of feel for the players. Avery Bradley, he brought him up under his wing. Mm-hmm. Avery got his whole attitude from Rondo.
Yeah, they talk about it. His little stint in Atlanta. I think Jackie Mack has talked a little bit about how players loved him in Atlanta, and they brought him in to kind of take Trae Young and show him the ropes a little bit. And it's I'm not sure how much of that actually happened. I don't know because Trey's his own sort of monster in terms of, he's pretty unbelievable and offensively talented and sees the floor, very differently than most people do. I say this sort of jokingly as an April Fool's joke, but for some reason, LeVar's kids have otherworldly vision. Is someone like that to come in and teach these? Again, I know what it is. You bring Nelly out of retirement and get him on the sidelines again. He seems to be enjoying himself lately. It doesn't seem like he wants to do anything remotely involving coaching anymore. But
I think he's enjoying himself more than he ever has in his life.
I would agree with that.
That's quite a business he has.
He looks good, though.
Is he living with Bill Walton yet?
Hopefully. But he looks like he's more relaxed than he's ever been. I mean, he looks like,
Yeah. Well,
he looks like he's enjoying himself.
By the end of his coaching career, he got to looking pretty unhealthy.
Yeah. He looks, I get it. He hasn't looked better. I mean, I saw a picture of him, it resurfaced like a couple of months ago. And I was like, he looks better than he's looked, in a very, very, very long time. So good for him. But again, the coaching answer, just, we don't know. The most perplexing thing about this team is there's not a clear cut, they need this answer. They have a ton of talent. They have a smart head coach. They have a smart front office that's done well in trades. I mean, look, if they sign Fournier to a long-term deal, giving up 4 second-round picks, I guess, to acquire Evan Fournier is a no-brainer move. They've let some guys go, and that's been unfortunate. And there's been some injury things with Kemba, obviously, that you wish that could go the other way. But it's frustrating to sit here and still, it's April. We've watched so much of the season happen already, and still nobody has any idea what the hell is wrong with this team.
I think it's on their 2 young stars to take over as leaders. I don't think Tatum's there yet, and I don't think Jaylen's quite there yet. That's the next step for this team. If they do that, then Smart's trying to do his part.
But like you said, it's not even just vocally leading. Like Tatum might never be that guy. It's leading by example out there on the floor. And as Brad highlighted so much last night, we've already talked about it. It's this, I think, Evan, to your point, like what's missing from this team? I mean, the injuries or inconsistencies in terms of the roster itself and who's available, that's a problem. You'd love to see that little stretch where they're at least all together and see what this team looks like. And hopefully, cross your fingers, come the playoffs, we'll see something like that. That would be wonderful. But absent that, what's missing is it's not the talent. They're playing well below their talent level, well below their talent. There are many years under Brad, they've exceeded their talent level in terms of, what they've done. And, especially that Isaiah Thomas team that made the conference finals, that had no prayer of beating LeBron, but hell, they got there and they were fun to watch. They played above their heads. This team is playing so below water. It is almost impossible, quite frankly, for this team to be led by those 2 all-stars and some of the talent they've had around them, even Kemba, if you want to include him in that, because he gets you the 20 a game or right around there when he is available. They are sitting 2 games below 500 right now and just play down to their competition. And while we're at it, they play down to everybody else. What is missing from this team, as Brad talked about, is that shake it off factor. It is just that mental shake it off factor. Like, I mean, to boil it down to the absolute most simple terms, I will say to my 8-year-old all the time, because he's I'm not going to sit here and say he's going pro or whatever, but he's a nice little athlete for an 8-year-old. But his biggest problem is that he can't get out of his own way mentally. He'll be, I'll be pitching to him outside. He'll swing and miss at the first 3 pitches. And I know that he is cooked for the next 15 pitches I throw him because he can't shake it off. This team just, it gets into those lulls, those ruts, and it can't shake it off. And I don't know how you flip that switch.
Yeah. And a part of that is, and everybody's guilty of this, including Marcus Smart, when the other team hits a big shot, you come down and you're just launching 2 seconds into the shot clock. It's, you don't hold your discipline after somebody hits a big shot. You just go for something wild. And I think they've all been guilty of that lately. Just kills ball movement.
Yeah, I agree with that. I tried to explain it to some people about how they try and hit home runs when they don't need to. It's like there's no need for that shot. I mean, at the end of the game, like, okay, sure, you need a home run shot. You know, you're down 6 and there's 59 seconds left. Yeah, you got to start maybe thinking about trying to hit the home run here to try and cut it down. But there's too many guys are trying to hit home runs. I mean, you got, you know, Smart does it, you know, Kemba does it, Jaylen does it, you know, Jayson does it. And when you go 0 for 4 with guys trying to hit home runs and the other team goes down and runs a good offensive set, you just keep burying yourself. This team, again, tries too much to try and be heroes. When collectively it takes a full 5-man unit to drag yourself back out of a 20-point deficit, which they found themselves in regularly lately. And they've climbed out of it only because they start playing a little bit harder as a team. They start picking guys up full court. They start trying to, you know, get into guys' airspace and stop worrying about fouling too much. You know, they get a little bit more aggressive. They get a little more handsy, sure, but they get a little more aggressive. They try and do some things, and all of a sudden, you know, you just like last night against Dallas. They get it, you know, they get the steal with Tatum at the end there. He doesn't finish, but Smart's right there to pick him up. And, you know, but that's too little too late. That stuff's got to happen much earlier. So I don't know. Again, maybe it's on Brad saying, hey, we're going to, you know, maybe at some point when they're getting smoked in the second quarter, you know, again, Dallas outscored them Wednesday night, 34-20 in the second quarter. Maybe at some point in the second quarter, you know what? And I see Pritchard do this. And that's why I love Pritchard so much. He just starts picking guys up full court. Just saying, you know what? I'll go up and, you know, Jalen Brunson throwing the ball on the floor. I'm gonna go make his life hell for a little while. You know, maybe they start doing that. Maybe they start, you know, aggressively, you know, trapping on defense. I mean, I don't know what it is, but when they start playing sound defense and turning guys over, that's when they start to look like normal again. You know, if they aren't hitting shots, and that's happening frequently. You know, if they can just start getting into guys a little bit more defensively, they can start building some more confidence. But they don't do that until it's desperation time.
Right. And part of what's kind of infuriating is that in Tatum and Brown, you have two guys who are, when they're playing at their best, very high caliber defensive players, and they're not living up to that. It's, you know, Tatum had this whole thing last year. Drew Hanlon said that he and Larinaga set up this goal to become an all NBA level defender. And I don't know if you remember, there was like a 3-week stretch where Tatum's blocking shots, he's shutting guys down. He was actually really serious about it. And I think that's really fallen off.
Yeah. Again, the energy's not there on that end of the floor. Sometimes Jaylen brings it. Sometimes Jayson brings it. Smart usually does, but you know, again, it's just a collective team effort that we're lacking here, I think.
It almost felt like when he threw that ball off the backboard last night that he was just saying, I nearly said a bad word, where he was just saying the hell with it, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, you know, he didn't. It was more out of frustration than the play itself. But, you know, it's just where they all are right now.
Well, before we do go, we've been going about an hour here. So before we wrap, one guy we've mentioned him a few times. We haven't really talked about him, Evan Fournier. Obviously, his first 2 games in a Boston uniform, the guy who was averaging 20 points a game when he came in for Orlando. In 64 minutes, he is 3 of 16, 0 for 7 from 3, has 6 total points, along with, you know, just some box score fillers, 5 rebounds, and assists, 2 blocks, 3 steals, and a turnover and a handful of fouls if you just want to round out the whole damn thing. But at the moment, you know, to the eye, he's, you know, playing like the kind of experience you conjure up when you Google his last name. So when is this thing going to turn around? When are we going to see the Evan Fournier that Danny Ainge acquired?
I don't think he fits in until the rest of the rotation gets back together. It's, you know, he does show really good ball handling ability, and he does seem to be very patient. I mean, he was, you know, last night I thought he was deferring a little bit, but he, yeah, I mean, people have to start sharing the ball again. I mean, you know, maybe the rotation needs some kind of a tweak. I mean,
you only got so many options.
well, I was, one that's occurred to me from time to time is Kemba as a sixth man.
Yep.
If you want to give it a little bit of a jolt, but I don't know if they're going to do that. Sometimes Kemba gets lost when he's with Tatum and Brown together.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's a better option if he gets to shine at the front of the offense.
I mean, what the hell? Why not try it, right?
Yeah.
And what, like,
Yeah.
try it for a game. What's the harm? You're
Right.
gonna
You
lose?
lose.
Right.
Yeah.
Just give him license to go out there and get buckets.
Right.
Instead of trying to fit in with everybody.
Yeah, it's tough again with you're introducing 3 new guys because all 3 of them have played. You look at Mo Wagner's first game. I loved his first game because all he was doing was setting a million screens and just trying to get guys open as much as humanly possible, which I loved. Cornette comes in and he's just letting it fly, and I appreciate that.
He offered you some rim protection.
Yeah, he's got confidence, which I like. In the Fournier thing, the Fournier stuff, I see it too, which is like you watch him and he doesn't quite know exactly where to go yet, but you can see like if he gets comfortable, that's a real interesting player to have. And that's the problem. They don't have that, like, when Jaylen and Jayson are on the floor together, another ball mover and a guy that can, win off the, beat guys off the dribble, which they've desperately missed because all the other guys they've had in that spot, whether it be Neesmith, Shemi, Grant, you name them, those guys, you take 2 dribbles, then all of a sudden they have no clue what to do. So having another guy out there like that handle the basketball is good. But maybe letting Kemba feast on second units is a good idea. When there isn't elite rim protection in the game, he's starting to get to the free throw line a little bit more. He's starting to get to the bucket a little bit easier. He's trying to absorb some contact, doesn't always get the call, but he's at least trying a little bit. Maybe that's the idea. Fournier is going to be a big part of that, but they have to get him more comfortable. And once, everybody's back in action, maybe we can start building some confidence here. But again, getting everybody to be healthy for a week is a problem in its own right.
Well, Fournier is the playmaker they say he is. I could see him playing off Kemba really well.
Mm-hmm.
But
Rob too. I always look at Rob as the Marcus Rob minutes or the Marcus Pritchard minute or the Pritchard Rob minutes are always fun because those guys look for other people. Same thing with Fournier here as a guy that can really find open guys. I feel like Rob Williams is the perfect guy for them.
Absolutely.
Well, fellas, I'll say this much: for a show that wasn't necessarily, ripe with fun content, I had fun talking. It was a fun discussion about these things because at least we're out here trying to problem solve. I mean, it's not our problem, and no one's going to listen to us, from within the Celtics as far as what our advice is. But damn it, we're trying. We're doing our part, and I think the people out there appreciate it.
It's been fun, guys. Thanks.
Mark's the only guy we've had. Mark's the only guy we've had that can go toe to toe with me in the hair game. I think, though. Mark's one of the few that the COVID haircut's been kind to Mark for sure.
Oh,
listen, especially now that he's got the beard too. Like if you put glasses on, I'm not so sure we couldn't run you through a filter and look at your future right here.
This is actually a trimmed beard, so yeah.
You see,
well, Jared Weiss has been sprouting.
Oh, Jared's been no question. He's leading.
Listen, man, that guy's off kilter. He showed up to do our show a couple weeks back just wearing a robe. He's a wild card now. We don't know what to expect with him.
Well, that's Marcus Smart's favorite locker room attire.
That's right.
His collection.
Little did you know there was a dress code here today. You did not show up in a robe.
Yeah.
We're going to have to do that going forward. So the Celtics back at it against the lowly Rockets tomorrow night. This, God willing, should be a victory. Then they've got Gordon Hayward, Terry Rozier, and the Hornets on Sunday, both games at the Garden as well. The Sixers Tuesday, then Wednesday, the Knicks, and then the 7-game homestand wraps up with the Timberwolves a week from tomorrow. I mean, on one hand, hey, you couldn't have timed out a 7-game homestand better with fans returning to the Garden. On the downside, the Celtics are playing the way they are with fans at the Garden.
How to at least take advantage of it, right?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Well, hopefully it turns. Maybe they'll reel off, 6 in a row, and this time next week we'll be talking about a team that really could make a deep run in the playoffs. See how quickly things change, right? Mark Murphy of the Herald, Evan Valenti, I'm Adam Kaufman. Thanks all for being with us. It has been a fun hour, and let's try and find a little positivity in this world, shall we? Mark, thanks.
Take care, guys. Thanks.